Mr. President, the world is waiting to hear from you.
Спасибо. Уважаемый господин Шваб, уважаемый господин Шваб.
Mr. Schwab, dear colleagues, dear Klaus, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity today for me to make my statement vis-a-vis the expert community which is participating in this forum thanks to your efforts, Mr. Schwab. According to the World Bank estimates, while there were 3.6 million people living on less than $5.5 US a day in the US in the year 2000, in 2016, this figure rose up to 5.6 million. During the same period, globalization resulted in a substantial increase in the profits of the large multinational companies, primarily American and European ones. And as to the people in European countries, developed European countries, the tendency is the same like in America. But again, who gets these revenues? Talking about companies.
Qui?
The answer is obvious. Those who represent 1% of the population. And what has happened with the other people? For the last 30 years, the income of more than half of the citizens of a number of developed countries in real terms has not increased, while the cost of education and health services has tripled. Well, has increased and has tripled actually. That is, millions of people, even in rich countries, have ceased to see the prospect of increasing their income. At the same time, they face the problems of how to preserve their own health and that of their parents, how to provide quality education for their children. The last 20 years have laid the foundation for what is known as the Fourth Industrial Revolution, which is based on the widespread use of artificial intelligence, automated and robotic solutions. The coronavirus pandemic has greatly accelerated such developments and their implementation. However, this process is also bringing about new structural changes in the labor market. Therefore, without efficient efforts by states, many people are risking their jobs, and this often affects the so-called middle class, which constitutes the core of any modern society. And let me turn to the second fundamental challenge for the forthcoming decade. In other words, the social and political challenge. Increasing economic problems and inequality are splitting the society. They pave the way for social, racial, national intolerance, and this pressure shows through even in those countries which seem to possess well-established civic and democratic institutions that are designed to smooth over, mitigate such events and incidents. Systemic social economic problems lead to public discontent, and it requires special attention. These problems should be resolved. There are dangerous illusions that we can just don't deal with it, bury them deep. But in this case, the public discontent will increase and the society will be divided, because the reasons of public discontent has to do with real problems which affect everybody, independently what political beliefs or what political ideas they stick to. Real problems, they lead to discontent. I would point out one more important aspect: modern technology. Modern technological, first of all, digital giants have been playing an increasingly significant role in the life of the society. Well, we talk a lot about that, taking into account what had happened in the United States. And we're not talking about economic giants only. In certain areas, they are competing with states and their audience include millions and millions of users, which using these ecosystems. They're using ecosystems and they spend a lot of time there. And the company's monopoly position, as they can see it, is best suited for running technological and business processes. Probably it's true, but here is the question. How well does this monopolism correlate with the public interest? Where is the distinction between successful global businesses, sought after services and big data consolidation on the one hand, and the efforts to rule the society in a rude and self-servicing manner by substituting for legitimate democratic institutions, by encroaching on or restricting the natural right of people to decide for themselves how to live and what to choose and what view to express freely. On the other hand, we have seen all of this just recently in the United States, and everybody understands quite well what I'm talking about.
C'était une élection frauduleuse, mais ne jouons pas leur jeu. Nous devons avoir la paix, alors rentrez chez vous.
Une vidéo très vite retirée par les réseaux sociaux.
Un président banni par les GAFA et des big tech accusés de vouloir faire la loi sur le web. Mais qui a donc le droit de réguler la liberté d'expression en ligne?
And I'm sure that the majority of people share this view, including those who are participating today at this meeting. The world cannot follow the path of building an economy that works for 1 million people or even for the golden billion. It's a destructive type of policy. Such a model is unsustainable by definition, and recent developments, including the migration crisis, have once again proved that. Today it is important to move from general statements to actions, to put in real efforts and resources to both reducing social inequality within individual states and step by step to narrow the gap between the levels of economic development of different countries and regions of the planet. Thus, we will avoid the migration risks. Designed to ensure sustainable, harmonious development, this policy has clear purposes and priorities. Those include the creation of new opportunities for everybody, conditions for people to develop and realize their potential regardless of where they were born and live. It is clear that an era associated with attempts to build a centralized, unipolar world order is over. It hasn't been started even. There were attempts to do this, and just that, but it's over. Such a monopoly was inherently contrary to the cultural and historical diversity of our civilization. It would be naive to offer some universal magic solutions for the set problems.